Hello YouTube and fellow preppers, I'm Geordie Prepper, and in today's video I'm just going to be looking at an alternative system to the current systems, and we're looking at banking. And I don't know the people behind WeRe Bank personally. They're not endorsing this video, they're not sponsoring it at all. I'm just looking at alternatives to the current unlawful system that's in place, especially in the banking system, because if you're awake and you know about the banking systems in place, then you understand that they're the main catalyst for a lot of the social problems that we have, and especially financial problems, because they're all perpetuated by criminals and people who have their own interests at heart. And I just wanted to share this system here, which is trying to be an alternative to this criminal Ponzi scheme that exists right now. And obviously, as preppers, it's a good idea to know about financial systems, and especially the current financial systems that are in place, because when they are removed, we need to put in a lawful, fair economic system which has the people's interest at heart, because it has to be created by the people. Obviously, in countries such as America and in the Constitution for the United States, it states that the only money to be generated is by the government, and it should be backed by gold and silver. Now, obviously, this was unconstitutionally removed from America, and this sort of thing has been going on for a very long time. We don't actually use money in central banks countries. So in England, we do not use money. We use currency, and all central bank countries use currency. And it's currency which is basically created out of thin air. It doesn't exist physically at all. I will come to a bit of this later, but this here is WeRe Bank website. It's just www.werebank.com. I'll put the link below in the description. And they're basically just trying to set up a more fair system. I am going to go into this system. I'm just going to see how it works, and if it does in fact work with the checkbook that I receive. So you can go to the site yourself and you can have a little look around. And basically what it works off is that you give the bank a promissory note, and this is just basically a promise to pay. And it's actually what central bank countries have you using right now. If you look on any note here in England, it'll say on the front that there is a promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of blah blah amount of something. It doesn't even actually state what it is. It just says promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5. It doesn't exactly say £5 of what. It's a bit nondescript about what it promises to pay, but all of the notes that are in your wallet right now are promissory notes. You give WeRe Bank a promissory note to the value of £150,000 sterling, and a promissory note has to be taken as if it were real money, so it has value to it. Once this is completed, it goes to the WeRe Bank, and then it's on their books as to draw value from. So you send this to them, and then you get a checkbook, and then you can pay for things with checks, which is a perfectly acceptable means of payment. And basically all that does is just gives the recipient the means to draw up from that, which in this case is the promissory note. If you look at the Bank of England website here, I see a lot of arguments against WeRe Bank, saying that it's a fake bank. But actually, these people that give the argument that it's a fake bank, they don't actually realise that the Bank of England is a fake bank. It's a central bank. It's a private bank. It's owned by a family that decided to go into the banking system, and they decided that they wanted to create a fiat monetary system. So that's money that's created from thin air. They just decide to print a certain amount, or in these days, they just adjust a few numbers on a computer. We are meant to accept that that amount has actually been created. Fiat currency was actually created and invented by the Chinese about 3,000 years ago, and that system eventually broke down because every fiat monetary system has a 100% failure rate. Federal Reserve as well, and all central banks are owned by one family. But they wanted more than that. They wanted control. And, as one of the members of this family famously said, I care not who writes the laws for the country or, rules the country, as long as he is the one that prints the currency for that country. Basically what they were saying is that they've got no interest in the country at all, or that its people. All they want control of is the money supply. They're not for the people, and they're definitely not by the people, because it's a private company. And if you look at their banknotes, you can see here on the banknote that it's a promissory note. It says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5, or £10, or £20, or £50. It doesn't really matter about the amount. What the important part is here is that it says, I promise, which makes this a promissory note. If you want to have demonstrated to you just how fake and empty this promise is, then all you have to do, and I would suggest that all doubters of the WeRe bank system, or in fact any system that shows up and offers an alternative to the unlawful system that we're using now, if you want to convince yourself, or attempt to convince yourself, that this system here has more legitimacy to this alternative which has reared its head, all you have to do is take a note. It doesn't matter which note, you just have to take a 5, a 10, a 20, or a 50. Take it to a cashier in a bank and ask them for your £5. So take a £5 note to the bank and hand it over to the cashier and say, I would like to receive my £5. So what this does is that you're the bearer of this promissory note, and this promissory note is promising to pay you. You are the bearer, on demand, the sum of £5. So you take your promissory note to the cash machine. You take the note to the cash desk, and you ask the cashier for your £5. Hand them a note, a promissory note, and you ask them for your £5, £10, £20, £50. They'll just give you a very, very blank look on your face. They just won't understand what it is that you're asking of them. And ultimately, they won't be able to give you the £5 because there is no £5, there is no £10, there is no £20, there is no £50 of anything that they can give you on demand as the bearer that they've promised to give you. And, if you think that WeRe Bank and other systems are fake, then all you have to do is just do this experiment. I mean, please just do it. I mean, don't put a silly comment back saying that's ridiculous. Just go to your bank with one of those notes, those promissory notes, and you ask them for your £5 or £10. And, I mean, at best you'll get 5 £1 coins, or you might get 2 £5 coins if you hand a tenner over, or you might get 10 £1 coins. You might get 2 £5 notes for a 10. For a £20, I mean, she might give you 2 £10 notes. Now, although the bank's promissory notes are completely empty and that they will not give you the £5 that of whatever it is that they're promising to give to you as the bearer of their promissory note. WeRe Bank, when you sign up to their system, you give them some trades and things that you can give back, physical things that that you can give. So if they were to call in the debt from you, then you would be expected to, from the list of the 3 trades that you gave, you'd be expected, to give that back. However, as it states on their promissory note and on their website here, they can just decide to cancel that debt. So, in fact, they can call in the debt and they can get you to deliver on your promise, or on their discretion, they could simply say that we don't need you to give back what it is that you have promised. So, I mean, the Bank of England is a private company, and the Federal Reserve is also a private company. It's also unconstitutional. In the Constitution, it states that the government creates the money for the people, because the people are the Constitution. So really, the people are given the money to themselves in America, or at least that's how it should be. Unfortunately, what happened was the Federal Reserve System got brought in through corruption, murder, bribery, fraud, and they've basically hijacked the system. It's an unconstitutional system. It's owned by the same family that own the Bank of England, and in fact the same family that own all central banking systems. The other thing that people say against WeRe Bank is that their checks are fake. I just want to point out that all banks, when they are moving currency between themselves, they actually use checks. They also transfer it by computer system, but predominantly they send checks to each other, which are held in vaults, and that's essentially what you're doing here with the WeRe Bank system. You're giving them a promissory note, which they're going to hold something of value in a vault, basically. So you're doing exactly the same thing here as what the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve and every other bank in the world does, because they do actually transfer notes between the banks physically, and they also transfer physical checks. So that's something that people say against WeRe Bank, that the checks are fake, when they're not. They're just what the current banking system uses as well. And promissory notes in English law are actually a lawful means of transferring wealth. So you just have to back that promissory note up with something. Usually, it could be work. So physical labour can back up your promissory note. You can promise to pay the debt that you owe someone. And in fact, labour was a system that you could pay back debt to someone. That's been something that you could use to repay a debt for thousands of years. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about labour. So somebody gives you something physical, then you offer something physical back. So you heard the expression, the fruits of your labour. Well, that could be something that you create, or it could be labour that you were returning to someone in return for something that you actually received physically. And talking about getting paid, if you look at the current system in England and all central bank countries, you'll notice that, and if you think about it for a while, you'll see that we don't actually get paid anything physical or anything of value, because fiat currency itself has no value. The paper, what all of this is printed on, the paper that it's printed on is worth more than what all of this is saying that it represents, because like I said, if you do that experiment where you take a note to the bank and ask for your £5, you won't receive it. And you doing the work that you're doing actually is what's paying for it. When you get a wage or a salary, you're not actually getting paid anything. All that happens is that some numbers get adjusted on a bank account, which is a bank that's owned by the Bank of England and owned by the same family that owns the Bank of England or the Federal Reserve or whichever bank it is in your country. They're all owned by the same family. So when you get paid, all that happens is electronically a few numbers change on your bank account. So what physical value, what currency or money have you actually received? And the answer is you haven't received anything. There's nothing of physical value that you've received. And if you take this promissory note to a bank and you ask for your £5 of what it doesn't state, £5 of rice, beans, coffee, what £5 are you receiving? The answer is you're not going to receive any of anything. The other thing that comes about from the current system, whether it's the Bank of England or Federal Reserve, is the taxes that are paid. The Bank of England and the Federal Reserve are obviously private companies. What has happened is that they create the currency out of thin air, but then they lend it to the government at interest. So the Bank of England gives the government £1,000 and it wants 1,100 back. This is who every single central bank country is in debt to. They're in debt to the private system that loaned them the money in the first place. So this means that fiat currency has a shelf life because the money that the government is given, it goes into the people's hands, but then because the government has to pay back the private entity who gave them the money in the first place back what they gave them plus interest, they have to tax the people to take back what they've been given and then give it back to the private system. And that's the reason that taxes exist now, and it's why all taxes in a central bank country are unlawful, because currency that we use was created out of thin air with interest on it. This means that all of the taxes currently in place right now are unlawful. They've been forced upon us. The system that we're using now, we're the slave to the money, and the money isn't a system for the people to use, for the exchange of goods. It's been completely usurped and hijacked, and all of the taxes are basically there to, and you'll note that the amount of taxes are actually increasing, and they bring up just ridiculous things that you're taxed for, like all of these ridiculously fake carbon taxes. It's got nothing to do with the environment. It's just the fact that with fiat currency, the amount of money or currency created and loaned at interest means that it has a point where there's not enough people who can be taxed to make the payments to repay the debt. And I mean, eventually, like I said, fiat currency has a 100% failure rate, because at some point there's too much currency created and not enough people to raise the revenue from taxes that pays the interest back. And then of course more and more money has to get created, and fractional reserve banking comes in. They create £1 with fractional reserve banking. They create another £100 attached to that £1, and it's just not a system that can survive. And in fact, it shouldn't survive, to be honest. So, that's my thoughts on WeRe Bank, and, some of the things that I've raised are what people who are against it like to quote that, it's a fake bank, the checks are fake, but, I mean, if they really looked into the system currently and they learned about fiat currency and promissory notes, and, if they actually did some research, then they would realise just how fake the current system is and how unlawful it is. And please just go to your bank with a £10 note and ask for your £10 and just see for yourself. It's the easiest, yeah, it's the most awakening test that you can do. If you think that the current system is legitimate, then just do that test, and I guarantee you'll be, you look on the cashier's face when you ask for what you're asking for, and I mean, I did it, and she just didn't know what to do. I just had to walk away with the note that I took to the bank. There was nothing that they could give me, which just shows just how worthless this promise is. If they try to expose this system or any other system which attempts to replace them, then they're really just exposing themselves, because more and more people are waking up to the fraud, and just how unlawful these systems really are. So this is Geordie Prepper. I hope something in this video has at least made you question the system that's in place right now, because there's nothing to be lost in raising a question about something. So, it's the one thing that we should be doing. We should be questioning things, why they exist. Why are we using this system instead of something that's lawful? That's something that we all need to ask. We need to ask the people who are representing, this system, why is it in place? So this is Geordie Prepper. Be safe and be prepared.